is Kimberli Lee, and you're listening to Native Americana Audio Cafe.
Kimberli, I've been starting the meetings and showing people this magical transistor radio that I got from a trunk of an Indian car.
All
supposedly written by a shaman, you know, but it's magical because it dials up people off the grid. Today, your name came up.
Cool.
And, what you're doing. So tell the people who you are and where you're at and anything else.
Okay, my name is Kimberli Lee, and I am a professor at Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, the heart of the Cherokee Nation. So I teach Native literature and Native rhetoric and Native film and media. So I'm very fortunate to live here and be working with some wonderful, brilliant students. And we talk about music a lot in the classroom. And so I'm happy to be here today and talking to you. It's been a long time since I've seen you, man. But
yeah, it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
What did you have background in ethnomusicology, Kimberli?
No, actually, I did my graduate work in Native American Studies and mostly in English courses, but I've always, ever since I was a kid, loved music and have always figured out ways to sort of weave in music to whatever kind of scholarly work I might be doing. I don't have training, as it were, on that level, academic training in ethnomusicology, but I do read it, so I have some knowledge of it.
I know, and we had conversations about the importance of our music in the communities. Any insights to this kind of?
Well, my feeling is, especially for Native people, Indigenous people, music is totally important in those communities because it's a carrier, it's a keeper of cultural values, it's a carrier and keeper of histories and stories and important things that get passed down. And I would say that's true of traditional music, and I would also say that's true of contemporary music. For many, many communities, you know, there's songs for everything. There's songs for birth, there's songs for death, there's songs for planting, there's songs for healing, which we could use right now. But all aspects of culture are expressed in songs and music. And I think for Indigenous folks, that's really close to the heart still, and maybe all people, but it seems like some cultures have sort of lost their way in that, and they see music more as entertainment, which, you know, it is entertaining, but I think it's so much more than that, especially for Indigenous people, because it is, it's just power, you know, it's a powerful language that I see as a particular kind of language. I've heard people talk about music as being very universal, and I can see that aspect of it. But again, you know, it's also very particular. It's a particular kind of language that all cultures share. I mean, there's songs in every culture, right? But for Indigenous folks, it seems to me that it's very keen still.
This is what we're uncovering in this program is a little bit of the unheard of, or the lost barrio of music in America, per se, you know. And I think the influence here was tremendous, but we just don't know about it through obliteration, through romantification, through
Right.
distortion. I think we're recovering it. Any thoughts?
Well, you know, you have to remember too that a lot of that music was repressed and illegal for a long time, right? The government put the kibosh on gatherings and dancing and music in particular uh, for a lot of cultural people, right? So it seems to me that that kind of also gets erased in our histories, that we tend to forget that, you know, you could go to jail back in the day for having a powwow or having a social gathering where there was songs and dancing. That all became illegal right around I guess it was the end of the 1800s and well into the 1900s for the old people. So they had to take that underground, you know, and keep those songs alive. And so I would assume that it, you know, having that factor in is dangerous, like um, from a dominant culture position, that those songs did have power and they did know that. And that's why they wanted to repress that stuff. So I think it's up to good people of good heart to go ahead and uncover some of that stuff and rediscover it, or maybe rediscover is not the right word, but recover it, you know?
Maybe even repurpose.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Repurpose. Yes.
I mean, that's where we're giving the songs that were powerful power once again, because to me, the medicine is in the present tense. Um, and so I think that's what we're doing as artists, as um, academic people, as painters, you know, that we're repurposing.
Yes. Yes. I agree with that. And I would say the songs and the music and the art is all sort of evolving and adapting to this new reality we live in. And it's good to know that that can happen, that those things can change with us.
How about since we're back to here, this present tense is, um, it changed your teaching approach? I know you're teaching online. Are you going to do it in the fall? What's going to happen?
Yes, of course, the COVID-19 really interrupted what we were all doing in universities and schools. And so for my schedule for the fall is going to be online. And in some ways, it's better because I can send my students to particular websites and places I want them to go to hear things, or you know, have a visual, and so that's great. But it does take away, in some manner, that immediacy of having a discussion about stuff where things are firing off in the classroom. But I think we're going to adjust to that, okay? But it's a little bit different. I have to say, it's a little bit different. But whatever it takes for our students to be safe and for our faculty to be safe, and our teachers are so precious that I don't, you know, I don't want anyone to risk their life to go to a job.
How do you drop your syllabus for your course? Like, how would you teach somebody from the very beginning about Native studies or Native literature?
Well, it's interesting you should ask, because I'm teaching a Native Lit class in the fall. It's Native Lit 1, which looks at some of the oldest texts that we have written in English. And I even take them a little further back than that. And I talk about winter counts, and I talk about wampum, and I talk about other writing systems that most people don't see as writing systems, right? So we talk about ways in which communication takes place, and then we get into the literature, whatever that means, right? It's all literature to me, but so I usually try to start off with some interesting author to me, William Apis, who was Pequot, and he was publishing in the 1830s, which is really interesting because, of course, that's the years of removal, right? And he wrote like an autobiography about his life and what it was like for him to grow up. And then he takes on some political issues. Interestingly enough, the Mashpee Nation, he writes about them. They've been struggling for a long time. And here we see, right, that they're still struggling with recognition and, you know, the forces of oppression that are trying to take their land right now. So Apis is a wonderful guy to sort of look at and read his stuff. And then we move on down in that particular course and look at guys like Luther Standing Bear, who was Lakota, and he wrote several books, but he was publishing in the 1930s and 40s. So I cover about 100 years in that first course, and we read about 5 books, and my students are always really surprised to know that long ago, right, that people had something to say. And so it's very, very interesting. And one of my favorite books to teach here at Northeastern State is Charles Eastman, his book, From Deep Woods to Civilization. It's a wonderful book, and he mentions Tahlequah. He came here. He came to the university and did a talk. So in the very building that I teach in, Charles Eastman was there, and he gave a talk about Native issues and Native political issues and Native literary issues. And so it's moments like that that really bring home to my students how important Native literature and Native artists are.
How about any correlations between Indian activism and literature? Like, can you tell some of me?
Oh my gosh, yes. In my view, a lot of Native writers have been wonderful activists. I'm thinking about guys like Vine Deloria Jr. I'm thinking of people like Winona LaDuke, right? People like Buffy St. Marie, who, although she has written a book, but you know, she's an activist too. And so through that literature, I think you see a lot of activism happening. A lot of people, like guys like Luther Standing Bear, who, you know, he was talking about the fact that his ways and his cultural ways were just as important as anybody else's, right? And the things that the Lakotas had to do to hold on to what they could in those days of boarding schools and, you know, being sort of wrenched out of your comfort zone. And so a lot of the things that he wrote about ends up helping to change the educational system for Native students. It took a while, that's true, but you know, those people documented what they went through, and that really helped. It really helped.
No, that's good. I love these crossroads too that are happening, and I think pitch and music are at the portal of interspecies communications, not just between human beings,
Yeah,
but between plants and animals and humans and humans
right.
and birds and all these
All
things.
beings have songs, don't they? I mean, birds have songs, wolves have songs, so many things. And now, you know, there's research that shows that trees communicate with each other through their root systems, and they support one another. And that's really interesting that you bring that up, because you know, that's a thing that I think Indigenous people have always understood in particular ways, but that other cultures have sort of lost that moment, right? They see it differently. But I just love it when Scientific American magazine comes out with, look what's happening, look what we know now. And then all my Indian friends are like, yeah, we've been knowing that. But it's really true. And I do love that moment of interspecies communication that takes place, you know. I think that's important to acknowledge and study.
Even maybe the form of communication isn't so much like, hey, how you doing, tree?
Yeah.
Like other forms, you know, like I always said the trees are like our original cloud storage, you know, that they have a relationship to our psyche that we don't realize. But case in point, in northern Minnesota, where I was grown up in Parkville, Minnesota, the mines, there was iron ore under there because we were on the nearest hill from the Hill of Three Waters, where one drop of water would go up to Hudson Bay, one down to the St. Lawrence Seaway, and the other third would go down to the Mississippi drainage to the Gulf of Mexico. And this
Yeah.
is a mile from my house. And this trees that grew up were 300-400 years old. The oldest jack pine tree in North America was standing there up to 5 years ago. And they moved the people because there was minerals under the ground. And they left the trees up. They moved the houses too. And all
Wow.
we could see was all the trees on this mound. And we had great memories of it. And one day they cut all the trees down except for one tree, kind of to give us the middle finger. And
Oh man.
but it seems like my memory decreased. And I was standing on a hill about 5 miles from there, facing the other way, and a tree of truck, a load of pulp, you know, logs came on a truck.
Oh.
Immediately it spun me around, and those were the trees that were cut from my home. It was
Oh
a weird
man.
connection, but I
Yeah.
think people are closer than we think.
Yeah. I do. I agree with you completely.
That's about the most commentary I gave, Kimberly, because you guys are saying so many wonderful things. So thank
Well,
you.
you know, would it be okay if I showed the cover of the book that
No,
I?
no, we would like to see that. I was going to ask you, give us an update on what you're doing and talk about it.
Well, I worked as a collaborator with two other editors, Jeff Berglund from Northern Arizona University, and Jan Johnson, who is in Boise, Idaho. And we put together a book, and it's called Indigenous Pop. And we were very lucky to get several different scholars to contribute chapters on different musicians. So it's not a exhaustive piece, but it is a wonderful place to start. And we have several different kinds of music. For example, John Troutman, who's I think he's a history guy, wrote on the reservation orchestras of the early in the 20th century. Sorry, that all those numbers. 20th century. I get all that mixed up. 20th century was the 1900s.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't, you know, it's a moment where Native people pick up English and European instruments and then make their own music, right? And it's one of those sort of bridges that happen. And then we have a chapter in there on Mildred Bailey, which was written by an ethnomusicologist named Chad Hamill. I think
Okay.
he's a, I think he's
NAU.
at Washington somewhere. So it goes back, we cover jazz, we cover hip hop, we cover folk music, um, everything you can think of. We tried to get, get in here. Um, and we all enjoy doing it. And I would like to see us do another book, and I'm trying to kind of sell that to my editor friends. So if y'all are watching this, Jeff and Jan, we sure need a second volume of this book. You know, musicians we talk about in here, also John Trudell, Buffy St. Marie, Floyd Westerman, your friend Floyd's in here, and Joy Harjo's music is in here. So a lot of interesting stuff, in my opinion. Of course, I would say that. But it just seemed like no one was writing about this, even though there was an interest in it. And I was so happy when the film came out just recently that Stevie Salas and those guys put together called Rumble. Link Ray's in it, of course.
Well, Lick was my friend, you know that,
Well,
like I
tell me
knew
a story about Link. I want to hear a story from you on
it
Link.
wasn't just that, like when he was playing in the last few years, he'd come through Phoenix a lot,
Yeah,
and I remember getting to see him because the Nammies honored him, so it kind
yeah,
of got on his trail a little bit to find out about
right.
his playing. But I think the coolest thing that he did that night, I went down earlier and talked to him at the show. He didn't say much words, we talk a little bit, show a little bit about a guitar, but during the whole set, man, he sat there like the first 20 minutes with his back to the audience and just hit
Really?
that guitar chord.
Yeah. I love that song, man.
Yeah, I guess it's a beat, like, and then in Indian country too. Let's see if you know this hit here.
Oh, yeah, that's Redbone, isn't it?
Yeah, and then when Buffy's, of course you can't bury my heart at Wounded Knee. When we're starting to talk about Native Americana, that's kind
Yeah,
of the path that my mom is crossroads. Like. And even out on the outer skirts of Native Americana, I would classify like Johnny Cash singing Pocahontas by Neil Young,
yeah, I know.
and the Pure Prairie Leagues, or the Last Lonely Eagle by the New Riders of the Purple Sage,
Gee, I forgot about that song.
and some songs like that that sing about the topic of the earth. If
Yeah.
there is a category, what would you say Native Americana? How would you define it?
Well, that's a hard one, dude, because America is a concept, right? It's and I learned that from John Trudell. America is just a concept. This has always been indigenous land, and so when you put Native and Americana together, I think that's one of those places where the two can kind of mesh, and and something good grows out of that. I'm trying to think really hard. Annie Humphreys is one of my favorite Native musicians who sort of brings up stuff like that. And gee, you caught me flat-footed here. I don't know what
That's
to
all right. Annie
say.
got a new album out, and we actually recorded on and helped produce up in Minnesota. We just interviewed her too on the
Oh,
series.
cool. Great.
Yeah, she's got some great music.
She is a wonderful songwriter. Like, I mean, it gets you right in the heart, doesn't it?
This
And
next one you'll even like more, Kimberly. Like you'll won't be let down at all.
cool. I can't wait till that happens. I really can't. That's good
Yeah.
news.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I did want to mention when we were talking about how music and activism can come together, it reminds me of Floyd's record that he based on Custer Died for Your Sins, which was Vine Deloria's book. And I never knew until I started digging down that they were such good friends and how they influenced one another. And, you know, Floyd had that kind of, that Johnny Cash baritone voice too. And I think, wasn't Floyd a pretty big fan of Johnny's?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You can kind of tell. And that's one thing I love about musicians and music is the kind of sharing that happens there, and the kind of things that you borrow and then honor in a way, you know, to sort of represent it, right? And then I know that Johnny worked with Peter Lafarge, and our friend did that little film on Peter Lafarge, that short. And that takes me all the way back to Michigan State when you came up there and performed. You remember that?
Yeah, it's all part of the trail. I think Peter Lafarge, what a protest writer. We talked about it in one of the last interviews about
Yeah.
Bitter Tears.
Yeah.
You know, in Johnny's album.
Right. I think Johnny really got it, you know. I think he understood it in ways that a lot of people chose to ignore. But he wasn't one to do that. And he really, I think that album was a problem for the record executives, but it was never a problem for Johnny Cash, I don't think. That was a great loss when he passed away. He did a lot of great stuff in his music career. Sure did.
Yeah, he's dearly loved in the
In
Indian
Indian
community.
country.
A lot of musicians, you know, like when you talked about Floyd and Vine, you know, I remember Floyd introduced me to Vine. We got off the plane and I was doing a concert with him in Southern California, and Vine was in the car, you know, and
Yeah.
and of course there's a little rivalry because you're Chippewa and Lakota, you know, or Sioux, Anishinaabe and Lakota, and so a little bit of ribbing, but it was a lot of fun with them guys because they used to love to go to just outside of Tucson, a little town, Mariana, and have a steak. And there was a karaoke bar, or like they could play some songs, and Floyd would sing some Johnny Cash, and Vine would get involved too.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see this on a level, but also to know how heavy duty these cats were.
Yeah, they were. That is so true. So true.
I got to record Floyd a few times, you know, and one of his last recordings, and after he worked all day, and you could hear him on the recording saying, "Oh, that digital, man, it winds up really fast. I remember the old days, you had to rewind." And, I learned a lot from him just by being with him. And I think for me, it was a thing about timing, where I would wait for him. I would listen to him, you know, because maybe he wouldn't come in on one every time, or he might come in on two or three. But it didn't bother me because I'd just come in right behind him. And he liked that, you know, he liked that, you know, like, and you learn to play music like that. And so you learn little things about musicianship and things. And Floyd was a great songwriter and a great influence. I'm glad you brought him up.
Well, I really admire all of the music he made. It was important. It was important. And so few people, it seems to me, know about his musical work. They seem to remember him as an actor mostly. But, you know, that music he did, I have that CD in my truck right now, and I listen to him pretty often.
I like this one. I'll play it. See what remember this song is, Kim. America, you invite the red man to sit at the table and be your guest, to justify the guilt that you are feeling. Now you're saying that you like us best. Do you remember this song, Red, White, and Blue? It was Floyd's.
Was it?
It's
Yes.
called Red, White, and Blue. It's pretty heavy, you know.
Yeah.
But now you've forgotten now that you are free.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to go listen to that one too. There's a lot of listening I need to do. Thanks,
All right.
Keith. I appreciate you,
Okay,
dude.
good.
Take care, man.
Okay, see you later.
See you
can
later.
leave the meeting now. Just press that red button, leave.
Aha. Bye.
Bye-bye.